Hello, how's it going? Thanks for clicking on my video. This video's kind of been in the works for like ever by now. If you clicked on my last video, I had talked about making my testimony pretty soon after that one, and I just ended up starting to film my testimony, and then all these different things started happening. Life got crazy and busy, and honestly, I got attacked a lot by the enemy, and just ended up, every time I would try to record something, things would happen, things would get messed up, and then even when I finally started working on the videos to edit them because they were extremely long. Yeah, I don't know how to tell a short story, unfortunately. I tell very long stories and I get sidetracked a lot and go down little like detailed rabbit holes that probably don't even matter relevance-wise, but yeah, I put those on my phone, and then the app like deleted them, and I lost all the work that I did. So I was like, ugh. And yeah, but I need to make my testimony. It's been on my mind a lot lately. I've been praying about it, and it's time to just do it. So even if I get interrupted, I'll just splice it back together later or something. So yeah, intro over, I guess. If this is your first time on my channel, I used to have my channel where I would talk about like spirituality. I would talk about searching for God. I would talk about occult stuff, conspiracies, just a bunch of different random stuff, I guess, and psychology. I would talk about philosophy, but once I found Jesus, I just deleted all my videos and just decided I should kind of start over, because none of that stuff was coming from the place where I feel like it should be coming from now as a Christian. And so yeah, welcome to my channel, and thank you for clicking on this video. I hope that I can share my testimony and maybe help someone, because, you know, in nowadays society, it's really not cool to like talk about Jesus or talk about your faith, which I don't care. And I used to be one of those people where, like, if someone started talking about Jesus, I would get up and leave the room. Well, I thought it was like super cringy. And yeah, I think even in my search for God, I had a lot of animosity towards God because I felt like he abandoned me for pretty much my whole childhood and my whole life. But if you give me a chance, if you're having those feelings, you know, I get it. But if you give me a chance, I can kind of explain some things, and, you know, it could really help you. And if you just take a few moments to listen to my story, maybe you'll find something that resonates with you. You can think about it, pray about it, and just let God show you. You know, don't rely on what I'm saying. Let God's Holy Spirit literally show you, and he will show up for you and reveal everything to you. So don't take my word for it. You know, ask him for yourself, and he'll show you exactly what I'm saying. So with that little, I guess, introduction type dealio, I'll just get it kicked right off, I guess. I have kind of a crazy life, so I'll try to stay focused. If this video ends up being super long, I apologize. Like I said, I have a really hard time staying on topic without going down a lot of rabbit holes. And I'm kind of a motor mouth, so we'll see how it goes. But I was born and raised a Jehovah's Witness. So, you know, I always was a very spiritual type person, I guess you would say. I always believed in God because I was raised believing in God. But I never really felt close to God or felt like he cared about me. We were really, really poor when I was growing up, especially when I was really young. And I remember back when I was one year old. So around that time, my dad was an alcoholic. My parents were extremely poor. They fought all the time. Our home was really not, it didn't feel safe or loving to me, really. It was pretty scary, to be honest with you. I would hide a lot. I had a lot of anxiety, and I love my parents a lot, but I know they struggled with various things, as we all do. And I don't think they understood, what was going on themselves to be able to kind of deal with those problems before having 4 children. And I was the youngest of 4. So, also, I think by the time they had me, they were just kind of like burnt out on having kids. And I really felt the neglect aspect. I'm sure my other siblings did too, because my parents just had to work all the time to support our family of 6, which I appreciate them doing, of course. But I never felt really a whole lot of love from my parents, and I felt unwanted and just like a burden since I can remember. And I wasn't able to sleep. I had insomnia since as far back as I can remember in my childhood. And as far back as I can remember in my childhood also, I had heavy, heavy depression, sadness, and loneliness. And that quickly kind of turned into self-hatred. And I remember when I was still sleeping in a crib, I would have visions, like spiritual visions, and I didn't know what they were. I didn't know if that happened to everyone, and I don't think I really could verbalize it to anyone, so I didn't talk to anybody about it. But I would have these visions, and it kind of freaked me out. And I started hearing voices talking to me around that time too. And I would have a lot of voices in my mind telling me things, telling me that people didn't like me, telling me that I was a burden, telling me that I should hate myself and that I should be ashamed of myself, and just very graphic things. I would see also in the visions graphic things, things that you don't want to see when you close your eyes. And there's just a lot of yelling and anger in my household, so it kind of made me more reserved, I guess, even though I was an extremely sensitive and emotional child. Like, I was always crying, and just very, very sensitive, and I had a hard time with really anything. I mean, it just, I would get hurt a lot if someone yelled at me or something like that. Like, that's still, like, it's something that I struggle with a lot, actually, I'm just a more sensitive person, I guess. And, so I would try to pray to God because, growing up a Jehovah's Witness, we're taught about Jehovah. We were always going to Kingdom Hall. We would go 3 times a week. I remember being a tiny baby, sleeping on the floor some of the times. And then as I got a little older, like, my parents, wanted me to be awake and pay attention the whole time. And I really found it super boring. I didn't find it, even though I was interested in God and I loved God, like, I knew that I should love God, and, that we were all, like, devoting and dedicating ourselves to him, but he felt very distant to me. He didn't feel, like, attainable to me. And, the more questions I realized I would ask my mom and dad, they couldn't really answer all the questions. And then people get upset when you start asking questions that they can't answer. So, eventually I just learned to stop asking those questions. And anyways, I would pray to God to try to get either answers or try to get some kind of support for this weird, like, voices and images that I was hearing and experiencing and everything. And every time I would try to pray, the voices would get so much worse, and it would just be blaspheming in my mind, flashes of like murderous stuff or like sexual stuff. And I was like 2 years old, when this was happening. So I was really super little, and I just remember, like, it would make me, I would keep trying to push through, and then, like, every time, like, a voice would, like, blaspheme God and be cussing at him and all these different things, like, I would ask God to forgive me for thinking that. And then the more that I would do that, the worse it would get, before I would just break down and start crying and then stop praying, because I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, why is this happening? I thought I was just a terrible person. And so eventually I stopped praying at all. And, I just didn't really know what to do. I thought I was just a terrible person, and that God wouldn't want to hear a prayer from someone like me who, I can't even pray to him without just obscenities and disgusting foul things coming out of my mouth and coming into my mind. Not knowing, now I know that those are demons, and they don't teach you anything like that in Jehovah's Witnesses, and I feel like most religions don't ever talk about that. But if you do some research into like generational spirits, and spiritual warfare, deliverance, those are demons. And I know they're demons because in my experiences actually rebuking them and casting them out and going through deliverance myself, that's gotten so much better. And, even though I'll still have experiences where I'll hear demons talking, and I'll kind of get into that later. It has gotten so much better. It used to be so bad. It was like torture. It was literally like torture, just being inside my body. And, now it's telling me my storage is low, so I might have to pause the video to delete something. So, yeah, that was really hard for me, because I wanted to worship God and come to him and do all these things and be like a good Jehovah's Witness, and I just thought there was something wrong with me, and I didn't understand why. And, I never talked to my parents about it, because I thought they would just think that I was a freak or something. And, so it continued up, the insomnia continued, the depression continued. I developed really bad anxiety. Like I said, I would hide a lot. I got really antisocial. And like I would go outside and play with other kids and stuff too, but inside, like, I just felt like an alien compared to everyone else, I guess. And by the time I was a teenager, my parents had gone through like a period where they almost got divorced, which was really hard on all of us. Like, they moved out, like, separate from we moved in with my dad, and it was just like a whole thing. And when we moved back in with them, I was just at pretty much the lowest, like one of the lowest points, and I started cutting myself. I would punch myself in the face and hit myself. I would pinch myself. I would burn the skin off of myself. Like, I would pretty much do anything that I could to harm myself, because I hated everything about myself. And I would hear voices telling me to do those things. And I thought it was my own internal voice, I didn't realize that it wasn't coming from me, you know, not realizing again that that was demons. If you don't know, you know, demons love tormenting people in the mind, and that's where they start, is the mind. They'll whisper, do this or do that, or, oh, what if we do this? And people think that it's coming from, you know, their own, and they're like, why are these thoughts like popping up in my mind? They don't really understand that those recommendations are not just like normal human compulsions or something that are coming into your subconscious mind or whatever, or into your conscious mind. Those are being injected into your mind by demons. And it's usually demons that are already in your family. They've been in your family a really long time. You'll notice it'll be something or some things that someone else in your family has struggled with in your generational line, which those are generational curses. And I've done a lot of research into it just makes so much sense. And now, like, if I would have known back then what I know now, my life would have been so different. And I just thank God now that I do know, because, you know, I can share this knowledge. I can actually overcome it. I can pray against it. Like, we don't have to be victims to living under these horrible demonic curses and generational spirits that, you know, it's not like it's just known one or two people in your family. We're talking about spirits that have been in your family line since the beginning of time. Like, since the beginning, they have been in your family line. They know everything. Like, all of your family line's weaknesses, all of their, like, propensities, all of their leanings, all of their hopes, their aspirations. They've watched them live and die. And, you know, you think when you're born, they're just not going to touch you. I mean, that's very naive. And it might sound crazy what I'm saying, but if you actually look into it, it's super real. And, you know, if I didn't experience it for myself, I would never believe it either. Because I dealt with so many things that, you know, like I said, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, blaspheming God in their mind, that's not normal, you know? And I think anyone can tell you that's not normal. And another, you know, one of the, like, I have a lot of, like, things that I get obsessed with, you know? I like learning a lot, and I'm always looking into different things just because it's interesting to me, and I like learning. And I took a psychology class, a college level psychology class, and I look into psychology all the time. And in psychology, they'll tell you some different things about, you know, what those might be. Oh, it's something called the inner critic, is what a lot of you know, people might say that is. It's called a demon. I hate to break it to you, but, like, you know, in the past, I feel like in the Middle Ages, they were pretty, like, knowledgeable about this stuff, actually. And they, you know, we dismiss that kind of stuff as crazy now, but it's completely 100% facts. And it just blows me away because people don't have any idea, and they think that we're, like, immune to that stuff or something. And no, that's just crazy. Even infirmities in your body can be caused by demons, 100%. It's like, look in your family line, see what those people struggled with. Do you struggle with it too? Could be a demon. I mean, just something to think about and something to look into for yourself, you know, look into it for yourself. You know, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. You can do the research and make your own mind up, but for me, it's very real. And, you know, I have a lot of proof that it is real, just personally. But anyways, yeah, you know, by the time I'm a teenager, I start cutting myself. I start punching myself in the face. I'm experiencing constant judgmental thoughts about myself. You know, things that I can't repeat because it's, like, too graphic. But horrible judgments on myself, you know, and it goes beyond an inner critic type situation where you're experiencing this voice and for me, it was voices just berating you, calling you names, telling you to hurt yourself, and then, telling you to commit suicide too. And I think the youngest that I can remember actually feeling like I wanted to kill myself was 7. It could have been a little bit younger. But I started, and even before I didn't know, like, you could kill yourself, obviously. I mean, I didn't even think that was, like, a thing, because I was a little kid, and nobody really talks about that. But I just remember wishing that I was dead, or I would wish that I had never been born. And then later on, the voices would tell me that, that I should kill myself, and I wanted to die. I wanted to die from the time I was, like, really super little, because I could see that I was a burden on everyone else around me. I could see that my parents didn't want me. In my mind, it's just, I was not blessing my family by just being alive. And there's also a lot of narcissism in my family, and anyone who's dealt with that can tell you that's really super difficult. To try to maintain your sanity and everything, and maintain, it's just a lot. It was a lot going on, and, I did not have a good, happy childhood. I love and forgive my parents, but that's just a reality. Like, I would never go back and relive my childhood, even though I'm thankful for everything that was done for me, and I'm thankful to be alive. I would never go back and live my childhood. No thanks. And so, I was having those type experiences, and then when I got a little older, I mean, the depression just got worse. I would self-isolate as much as possible, and just kind of, like, we would go to the Kingdom Hall, and I would just fake it, and that's a super high, like, I don't know if you know anything about Jehovah's Witnesses, but it's a super high control cult, and, when I was in it, I would never, like, say it was a cult or something, but once you get out and you start seeing these truths, it is. And my parents were very strict. That religion is very super strict. And, basically it was almost like feeling like you couldn't have your own thoughts, you couldn't have your own opinions, you couldn't be yourself. You have to pretend to be this perfect, like, person all the time, and suppress, like, how you actually feel and how you actually are all the time. And it was just exhausting and extremely toxic. And I think that's part of why I started cutting myself, because, for me, I would just internalize all my emotions. I remember by the time I got to be, even though I would cry a lot as a little kid, I would cry constantly. Once I got to be a teenager, I couldn't cry anymore. Like, I reached a point where I literally physically could not cry. I would try to cry sometimes, and it wouldn't, I'd be like, try to, like, conjure something up, and it would not happen. And so, especially when I started cutting myself, it was like that release that I needed. And it was also like a punishment that I craved, because I hated myself so much, and I thought I deserved to be punished for existing. And it was, like, soothing to me to be able to, like, get almost vengeance on myself and on people, maybe. Like, if someone said something to me that was really hurtful, or they called me a name, or they yelled at me or something, like, I knew exactly what I was gonna do as soon as I was alone, I would be like, okay. Like, I would suck it up and push it down, and then cut. And I wouldn't just cut once or twice, like, I would cut a lot. I would cut until, like, it felt better. And, I had a whole little kit hidden in my room. I would cut, I would clean up all the blood and the mess. And then, I would bandage myself up and take care of my wounds. And it was a whole ritual that I would do daily. Like, there were very few days in between where I wouldn't cut myself, because it just became like my security blanket. And, then even if I was hurting, it was like I was able to like manage my emotions better, because I could like feel the healing wound on my arm or something, and it would like soothe me. And when I got a little bit older, like in my upper teens, I started starving myself. I've always been skinny, but I just like, I hated that my body had like developed, I always like was a tomboy, and I didn't want boys or men looking at me. My dad and my brothers were always like ogling women on TV and like saying all this stuff about them, and I just didn't want that for myself. I was like, I'm not interested in being treated like I'm a piece of meat or something. And so I would pray to God to like not give me boobs, and that's just not something that I wanted. And then when I went through puberty and everything, like, I developed, and thank God I never got like a large chest or anything, but it still made me so uncomfortable, and I felt like my body betrayed me. And I just, how it is when you're a teenager, you feel awkward, and I'm 34, by the way, so like, it was a long time ago that I had puberty. Sometimes people think I'm like 19 or something, and I'm like, no, I'm like mid-30s, dude. Yeah, puberty was not kind on me, as it's not on any of us. It's, all the emotions and the hormones and the feelings, and so I don't know, my self-hatred just got a lot worse. And yeah, I started eventually starving myself. I did share a room with my sister, but as soon as when she moved out, like, I was able to be more secretive even. And yeah, I started tracking all my calories. I started weighing myself like multiple times a day obsessively. The longer it went on, it just got super obsessive. When I first started my my work. Okay, I had to delete some stuff on my phone to make space. But like I was saying, when I first started my my like work life or whatever, when I got a job and everything, then I could hide it even more. And I would barely eat anything at work all day, and I was very strategic and like careful about it, and I just became more and more obsessed with it as time went on. I think when I first started intentionally like denying myself food, I was 18, and then by the time I was 19, yeah, I was just deep like in it, and very secretively doing that. And when I would come home from work, I would have barely eaten anything all day. And then my mom would make like a dinner that I would bring in my room, and I would just hide it under my bed, and then I would wait till everybody was asleep and throw it in the trash. So I always kind of had a weird relationship with food, because I have like texture issues, sensitivities as a kid, and some foods that I would try to eat would just like make me gag or throw up. And so my dad would sit and like scream at me at dinner time, and it was just traumatic. Like, food, anything revolving around food and meal times was traumatic. And yeah, like I said, I would not relive being a kid. It was really hard, and I wanted to eat the stuff, I just physically couldn't. I physically couldn't do it. And yeah, I mean, I was, and kids are picky anyway. Like, some of it was me being picky, Like some foods I wouldn't try. I was very closed-minded with foods, and some foods I just wouldn't try, but mostly it was like I physically could not force myself to eat it because I would start gagging. And then like if I gagged it and spit it in the towel, like my dad would like spank me because he's like, you're spitting your perfectly good food out and stuff. But it's like, yeah, but I was gagging like I was going to throw up, you know? And it was just really difficult. And so I don't know if that gave me issues around food or not, but I think the main thing for me with the eating disorder was it was just an extra way for me to control my emotions. You know, I became really obsessed with like seeming like I was managing my emotions, I guess, outwardly. And part of it might have been because I would get in trouble for displaying emotions as a kid. But also part of it would be like I would see other people erupt in anger around me, and I would like promise myself that's not ever going to be me. Like I don't want to act like that, you know? And I think it gave me like a fear of emotions kind of, even though I felt a lot of emotions and I was very like was and still struggle with being a very emotional person. I was like, I'm not going to let that control me the way that it's controlling that person, you know? And it's funny how when we're little kids, we make these like oaths to ourselves. And I feel like I did a lot of that as a kid. And I didn't really ever think about it until I started getting into like the generational curse and deliverance type teachings. Because, yeah, I don't remember what I was saying. I had to delete some other stuff on my phone. Yeah, I never really thought about any of that kind of stuff, but yeah, the managing the emotions thing was huge for me for my whole life, and a lot of it was kind of like a self-preservation type thing, I guess you would say, because like I didn't want to get beaten for displaying an emotion, or like, you know, get in trouble for crying, you know. It just, I wanted to cause people as little problems as I possibly could, and, you know, it kind of made me a perfectionist in a lot of ways, especially paired with the high religious controlled group that I had been born and raised into. It was just a lot of pressure on me all the time. And, so yeah, the eating disorder just became part and parcel of my like regular like control yourself slash punish yourself slash atone for not being good enough slash get vengeance on people who hurt you and get vengeance on yourself type like super toxic cocktail, I guess. And you know, an eating disorder is nothing to mess around with, man. Like, especially, I have a really fast metabolism. Like I said, I've always been a skinny person, and I have to eat like every 4 hours. Otherwise, I get like headaches. I get really lightheaded. I get moody. I just feel awful, and you know, I have to eat regularly, and just that did not help the whole situation. Like, yeah, I feel like it just made me way more crazy. But again, I just got super obsessed. And, you know, those voices would tell me, yes, like, this is what you need to do. Keep doing it. Like, I would get more, like, twisted ideas about, like, how to keep my weight down. I got super obsessed with the number. I got super obsessed with, you know, being able to fit into smaller and smaller clothes, and got super obsessed with being able to exist less as a person and take up less space and be less of an inconvenience to everyone around me. Because I didn't think that I had the right to live in this world, which is really sad. Because we all have a right to live in this world. And, you know, it's never an accident if someone is born into this world. If your mom gets pregnant with you, like, that is a miracle from God. And It's just one of the ways that Satan, the enemy, attacks us. And, you know, telling a little child that, telling a teenage girl that, telling any person that they don't deserve to exist in this world, and making them feel like they don't exist in this world is so messed up. But that's what I dealt with every single day. I mean, and it's not just like I would have a thought here and there. It's like all my thoughts were just super toxic. Like, I felt like there was a war inside my mind every day, and it was just a nightmare. It felt like I was in prison. I would tell, because sometimes I would talk to my sister about it, like when we were younger, or probably really just her, because like nobody else. And I was like, I feel like I live in a prison. Like, this body is a prison. This body is not my body. I didn't think of it as like an extension of me, or part of me, or like my avatar, or, you know, my meat suit or whatever. Like, I was like, I'm in prison. And it's a lifelong sentence, and like, I'm miserable. Like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to exist in this body. Like, I don't want to exist in this life. I hated my life. I hated myself. Yeah, it was super unhealthy and super difficult, and really, like I said, a nightmare in every sense of the word. And I think more people probably deal with that than we'd like to admit, which is super sad. But, you know, you're not alone, and there's things that you can do to actually deal with this stuff. It doesn't have to be that way. It's just we need to get educated and share this knowledge. And anyways, so yeah, I was super into my eating disorder. You know, I had my little friend. That's kind of how I thought of it. It was like my little secret friend. And as time went on, I started developing bulimia as well, because you can't just not eat without. And I mean, when you're doing that, you're already obsessed with food. You're thinking about food all the time because you're hungry. And like I said, I have a fast metabolism. I got to eat frequently. And like, you can ask my boyfriend, he's like, you eat more than I do. Like, I eat more than like most people that I know. And like, you know, I love food, and I've always loved food. Like, who doesn't love eating food? But yeah, when you have an eating disorder, your obsession with food is like insane. It's like a love-hate relationship type thing, where you're obsessed with food to the point where obviously your whole day, your whole life, like everything you think about from the moment you wake up. It was way worse than cutting myself, because cutting myself, I would think about it and want to do it, but I would do it, you know, and hop in the tub and do it or whatever. And it's not really like my whole day would be planned around it. Like, maybe, you know, I would have a plan to do it that day, but my whole entire day wouldn't be planned around it, right? Because it's not really that time consuming, and you just like do it and then you're done. And you're like, oh, it feels better or whatever. Eating disorder is like, from the second you wake up, like, you're like freaking obsessed with doing that thing and wanting to, like, because you have to eat several times a day, you know? And you're like, okay, and I would have like journals, I would have apps on my phone where I keep, like, I mean, later on when I got a phone, because I didn't have a phone until I was like 19. But I would track every single calorie. Like, I downloaded all these calorie apps. You know, the first thing I would do in the morning is weigh myself. Like, I would get totally naked. I would go to the bathroom and empty everything out. I would weigh myself. You know, I would write all that stuff down and log it. I had all my calorie apps. I would like count my water consumption for the day and make sure my water consumption was high enough, because it actually like pushes water weight out of your body and different things. And, you know, I got on the eating disorder forums and got super heavy and deep into that, and no one knew. You know, and they share all the tricks, like, you know, fasting without anybody knowing, starving yourself without anybody knowing, hiding it, hiding food. You know, it was just a total full-blown crazy obsession. And I'd like to say it only lasted a year, 2 years. No, that lasted for 10 years. Like just about 10 years. And like I said, when you're not eating the right amount, because I would aim for about 1,000 calories a day, and a lot of days I would go way under that. Some days I would mess up and go over that. But I would be very, very, very angry at myself and punish myself if I went over the specific like amount of calories. And then I would do different diets. I was always doing a different diet. I got addicted to laxatives. And some days I would eat normally though. Like I would be like, I need a cheat day, and I would give myself a day, or I would go all day. I remember because me and my brothers would hang out a lot. Like once I was an adult and I was working, we moved to a different state. I grew up in Alaska, and and I was born in Kentucky, and we moved back to Kentucky. Me and my brothers and my parents, and my sister had already moved out and gotten married at that time. And I loved hanging out with my brothers, and like I said, I love eating, and I wanted to eat. I didn't want to eat at the same time. I was like, I want to like eat, but and enjoy myself, but it's like when I say that I can. So like me and my brothers would always hang out when I would get off work, when we would all get off work together. So I would starve myself all day at work. And then I was really obsessed with not eating fat also. So maybe if I would eat something, it would be like fat-free candy, and like a soda, because it doesn't have any fat. And that became more of an obsession to me than calories actually, was fat. Like after a few years of my eating disorder, I realized just not eating fat for me would actually cause me to lose weight and different things. And never mind that your brain like needs fat. But anyways, yeah, so I would starve myself all day at work and just try to hide it from my coworkers or whatever. And then at the end of the day, when I would get off work and everybody would get off work, me and my brothers would go out to eat, or me and my family would go out to eat, or we would get a bunch of snacks and watch a movie. And that way I could actually eat and enjoy what I was eating, and I wouldn't feel guilty or I would just enjoy it. And of course, as time went on, it was harder for me to kind of do that. Like I would feel guilty and punish myself with laxatives, or punish myself with more laxatives than I would normally take, because those things are like, you're going to have like horrible diarrhea cramps if you take too many laxatives. Like it's literally the worst. And yeah, that's what I would do to punish myself, or I would cut myself to punish myself. I was pretty creative with punishing myself, to be honest with you, and that was like a little sick, weird thing that I had going on. But I don't know, I hid it pretty well, and my family had no idea like that stuff was going on, and that's how I wanted it. Like I didn't want anybody to know that stuff. I was ashamed of it. I just, I hated myself. And the longer it went on, like, the worse it got. And I never felt better. But I could kind of fake it where, like, nobody knew anything. And I would hide all my feelings in, like, humor. I like making jokes and, goofing around. And I would just mask it and kind of, I guess, living two separate lives, and getting by that way. And I remember it got to the point living, in Kentucky there, where I was suicidal, like like more than usual suicidal, where I was like, I'm gonna do it. Because things were super tense with my mom. She was really lashing out at me all the time. I didn't know why. I didn't know what I was doing wrong. I'm like, I don't understand. Like, I would just cry, and like, I was like 20, 21, 22 at this time. And I was like, I don't understand why no matter what I do, like, everybody hates me, and I hated me. And, I don't know. It was just it was a very difficult time. And again, I didn't really feel like I had anyone to talk to about it. I made an appointment with a therapist, and the intake appointment was like 3 hours long. And I knew there was no way I could break away to be able to go. Like, we were always going to meetings. We were always like together. Me and my family were always together. When I wasn't working, I was at home with my family. I didn't have a car, and I was like, there's no way I can break away for 3 hours. Like, when you're a Jehovah's Witness, you can't have non-Jehovah's Witness friends either. And like, even though I did have a friend that I worked with, I really couldn't get away with her, like, to hang out. Like, we would commute to work together, but my parents would have known. And I know it sounds silly to someone who wasn't raised that way. Like, you'd think that it'd be like, you're an adult, like, just go. But it wasn't that simple. Like, and they would have flipped out if they would have known, like, that I'm going to see a therapist. And like, it was a whole thing. So I did actually confide in my mom and my dad that I was super depressed, and that I was so depressed that I was worried, and each of them changed the subject completely when I told them that. So I knew that I couldn't confide in them, and I just didn't know what to do. I was at the end of my rope, and I was cutting myself all the time still. I had tried to quit multiple times. Like, I did want to stop, because it was like, it gets more difficult to hide the more you do it, obviously. Like, my arm was like shredded, my thighs, like, it's hard to hide all that stuff, but I managed to hide it the whole time. Nobody in my family ever found out. And so one day I was in the tub, cutting myself, and I was like, I'm just gonna do it. Like, I'm gonna do it. I'm so tired. I'm so tired. Like, I just wanted to be free. I wanted to be out of this jail cell that I felt like I lived in. And I was so exhausted. I was so mentally drained, and tired of people yelling at me, tired of feeling like I don't belong, tired of being a burden on my family, tired of being like pretending like I'm something that I'm not. I was just tired. And I felt like I was like 300 years old, and I was only like 22. And so I made a cut in my wrist, and it was like, I literally saw the vein. I just had missed the vein. If I would have cut any deeper, I would have got the vein. But right then and there, I heard a voice. And this voice was different than the other voices that I would usually hear. And it said, Suzanne, don't do it. Don't do it. I'm getting chills right now. And you guys, that was God telling me, like, I'm here. Like, you don't need to do this. Like, you have a future. And like, right then and there, I'm sitting in a bathtub with the water full of blood, with these like open wounds on my arm. And I think I just started crying, and asking God, like, please help me. Like, what should I do? What am I supposed to do? Why am I here? Like, can you just tell me why I'm here? Because if I just knew the reason why, at least I can do something. At least I can feel something. At least I can know that you're here with me. And I was like, I can't do this. Like, I realized at that point that, if I kill myself, there's no hope of anything ever happening for me. There's no hope of this situation getting better. There's no hope of anything at all, ever. And I was like, okay, I'll try. I'll keep trying. I'll move out. Because at that point, my sister, she had visited and told me, you can come live with me and my husband. And I was like, okay, like, I have this opportunity. I can move back to Alaska. Like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I might as well. It was like, literally, either I'm going to kill myself right now, or I'm going to move back to Alaska. And, a lot of things had happened. I had been what I thought was in love with this guy, and he turned out to be gay. And like, there was a bunch of situations on top of that where I was like heartbroken. And So yeah, I wanted a fresh start. And so I moved back to Alaska, and it it was pretty terrible, to be honest with you. That was a major mistake. Without going into like a huge ton of details, her husband developed a thing for me while I lived there. I didn't know what was going on. Like, I had never even kissed a guy or anything, but we were getting drunk all the time. Um, he ended up coming on to me like super hard. Um, it was a lot of, like, I can go and make a huge, like, 3-hour video about that whole situation. But my sister ended up blaming me for everything and kicking me out. And by that time, a friend of her husband's had, like, we had kind of started, like, dating. And so after I moved into her house, let me back up a little bit, I stopped going to the Kingdom Hall, because by then I really was not interested in the religion anymore. I never saw Jehovah working in my life at all. I felt totally abandoned by him. And before I moved out of my parents' house, it sucked because my dad was super upset that I was moving out. Everybody got super upset, and just kind of like everybody was mad at me. But also were like begging me not to move out. And I just remember, like, one day my dad, like, he just got super upset with me, and I started crying, and I left, and I went and walked to this park, and I sat under this slide in the rain, and I just said a prayer to God to, like, please help me. And I really, like, poured my heart out to God. And I just never felt, I mean, other than the time in the bathtub where, like, God told me, like, don't do that, I never felt like I heard anything from God after that. And especially when I would go to the Kingdom Hall, like, I felt super far away from God when I was in the Kingdom Hall. And they also, so one of the things that always got me through in my childhood and in my whole life is singing. I love singing, and I've always had a huge passion for music. My dad is a musician. I mean, in his spare time, like, he's a songwriter and he sings, and he's really talented. And I definitely am the same way, where I love music. I always wanted to be a musician. I play piano and sing and stuff. If you, like, check out some of my stuff on my channel. And yeah, that's something that always, like, when we would go to the Kingdom Hall, singing the songs was super therapeutic for me. And around this same time, before I moved out of my parents' house, they changed all of the songs in the Kingdom Melodies book, and or the Sing Praises to Jehovah book. And they were terrible. Nobody liked those songs. And literally, you're talking about every single song that I have known and grown up with since I was a baby, all of a sudden were not there anymore. And, you know, I could sing all those songs from memory, like, every time one of the songs, like, it was like, you know, when humans all sing together, like, that's such a great feeling. Even if you're in a weird cult, like, it feels good. And, like, suddenly, nobody knew how to sing these new melodies. They didn't sound good. They didn't flow good. People were always getting tripped up, like, how does this tune go? It wasn't catchy. It wasn't beautiful. Like, I couldn't get into it. It completely threw me. And it was like the one thing in that religion that I could cling to was gone. And, like, that, the singing the songs was one of two things that really kept me in the religion as long as it did. So singing was the one. And then the other was, I started studying Japanese when I was 14. And I would get all my materials. I had a Bible, I had a songbook, I had all the Watchtowers and Awakes in Japanese. And then I would also sit and translate the talks into Japanese, and write it in my notes, when I was at the meetings. And that kept me going for a really long time. Because no matter how, like, boring or whatever, like, I thought it was, I was more into it than I would have been because I was translating the talks and because of the songs that I was able to sing and feel like some kind of unity that way that I craved. And when the songs ended or, changed, it just really deeply affected me. And it made me feel lost, to be honest with you. So when I moved out of my parents' house, I came and flew back to Alaska, put all my stuff in boxes and like shipped them up here and everything. And then, it was an unfamiliar kingdom hall because my sister like lived in the valley at that time. And like I didn't know anybody. And we went like a couple times after I moved back up, and like I was not feeling it. I was like, I don't think I want to do this. Like, and she wasn't really spiritually strong either, so like we just didn't go. And we were just getting drunk like I said, we were getting drunk like every single night. Like from the night that I moved there, like it was almost like right away, like we were like partying every night. And by that time, like I was bulimic and throwing up, and like it was just super toxic. And yeah, so she kicked me out or whatever, and then I had already met and kind of like developed a thing and was dating her husband's best friend. And when she kicked me out, I didn't have anywhere to go, so he was living with his grandma in town, and he was like, you can move in with my grandma and I'll move like to the valley because my sister moved out too, like with her husband. And so they moved in together, and I moved into his grandma's house, which is like super awkward because I didn't even know her, but she's a sweetie. And she's a Christian actually, but I was not having anything like that at that time. I was like not interested in really, I think I just gave up on God. I was like, especially when that stuff went down with my sister, because everything happened. Her husband kind of like molested me. It was very confusing. She wanted me and asked me to sleep in their bed with them time and time again. And at first I resisted, but then, getting drunk, partying, doing stupid stuff, like I started doing it, and I would sleep in the bed with them. And then, well, one night, like, she wasn't around, but we still slept together, like laying next to one another in a bed. And like he ended up molesting me in the morning, and I started crying and got up immediately and left the room. And I don't know, it was just very disturbing because I grew up with her husband. Like he was always a family friend of ours, and I never in a million years would have thought that he would have any interest in me, because like I've known him since I was 5. He's like my brother. And like I forgive everyone involved. I'm not saying any of this stuff to like pin blame on anyone. It was a complicated, like weird situation. But instead of talking with me about the whole situation, she ended up just completely closing off any possibility of discussion and blamed everything on me, and said I was a horrible person, and said she didn't feel safe with me around her son, who was like a year and a half old at the time, and kicked me out of her house. And it's like, okay. So, yeah. And obviously I did feel terrible because I was like, wow, I should have probably like seen, I was just super naive though. But I was like, I should have probably seen that coming, like that he was interested in me or something. But he always would like pick on me when we were kids and stuff. So I didn't, the last person I would expect to be into me was him. And I made a lot of mistakes in that situation where, looking back, I'm like, God, I wish like I would have never came and stayed with them if I thought that that was a possibility, to be honest with you. And it was just heartbreaking all around, to be honest with you, because I begged her, like, meet and talk with me, like, so we can at least talk about it, because, like, I was very confused at the time, too, and, like, I understand she was hurt and everything, but, you know, she told my family all this stuff. She told everyone that I slept with her husband and like I was a virgin. And I was like, how, like, I did not sleep with your husband, dude. Like, we slept next to each other in a bed, but we did that a bunch of times too on your request, you know? So it was just really hard. And so after that, I was like way more suicidal. And I was like, why did I come here? And then I'm living in this guy's like grandma's house, which was like super awkward. And then, you know, me and him got together. We started dating. He was very verbally abusive. He was a narcissist, to be honest with you. And, you know, when I'm talking about people in my story, like, I forgive everyone. I honestly do. Like, I don't have ill wishes or ill will towards anyone. Like, I pray for every single person that I'm talking about. It's just part of what happened to me, though. And I feel like it is kind of relevant. Even though I'm trying to go about it as quickly as I can and everything, I just think it's relevant to talk about the whole situation because it gives a wider scope on exactly all the messed up stuff that I was delivered from. You know, and this is my testimony and it's relevant to who I am as a person because all of these instances like shaped who I am today. And so yeah, I started dating that guy. And pretty soon I realized like he had some major anger issues. Like he would like explode with anger. He would ignore me for long amounts of time. You know, he was addicted to video games. But I don't know. Like I don't know. I guess I was just used to being treated like crap or something because didn't I would just keep going back to him and you know, we would get drunk together and then like he would do stuff without my consent or like talk me into doing stuff and eventually like we moved in together and you know, I lost my virginity to him and sadly cuz like I always wanted to wait till marriage, but that didn't end up happening and like it was traumatizing, to be honest. Like that whole situation was really, we were getting drunk all the time. I didn't know how to deal with any of the stuff that was happening to me because at that point my family, I don't think they really wanted to talk to me because they were kind of siding with my sister, thinking that I was a horrible person. I kind of did feel like a horrible person because I was like, why did this happen? Like I didn't plan anything to happen like that, and then it happened, and like I wasn't even able to tell my sister that her husband like touched me, and like he didn't like, I mean, he grabbed my butt, okay, is what I'm talking about when I say he molested me. He grabbed my butt like really aggressively, and nobody had ever touched me like that before either. So, and I mean, I had started crying when it happened immediately and it was like painful also. And just nobody had ever done anything like that to me. And like I said, I was very naive and I didn't know how to react to it. But I didn't even tell my sister about that because she refused to talk to me. She literally would not talk to me. She was like, I'm disgusted with you, just for laying in a bed next to her husband, you know. And I get that I did wrong because like I should have kicked him out of the room. He was also begging me to let him kiss me. And I told him he was disgusting, and, like, it was a whole thing. But, like, yeah, I should have kicked him out of the room, you know? And but he was also, at that time, my best friend, and I felt like he was the only person who understood me. And I was drunk, and, like, it's not an excuse, but people can't make good decisions when they're drunk, and that's why, like, I really hate alcohol, to be honest with you. Like, I really detest it. It's caused so many problems in my personal life. And they call it spirits for a reason, because you are letting demonic entities, like, enter you. I don't know if you've ever been so drunk that you black out. That's happened to me, like, a gajillion times. And when that happens to you, you're literally not there. You're not there. Like, and like you can do things and say things and like you have no idea that it's happening. And like you wake up the next morning and people tell you like, oh my God, like you were having like a crazy panic attack last night and screaming and crying for like hours and nobody could calm you down, and like you don't remember anything. And like that's literally terrifying, or like you were walking around talking and saying all these things or whatever, and like you don't remember anything. It's because demons are taking over you. Like if you're going about and doing all these things and you don't remember, or I don't know, like it is very demonic, and like people get messed up on alcohol like that for a reason, because it does allow your body and mind to be taken over by something that's not you. And it's just really scary. But I don't know. Yeah, so I don't even remember what I was saying, but basically mistakes were made, and I was feeling very heartbroken, and I lost my whole family. I mean, nobody in my family really wanted to talk to me after that, and I kind of wanted to avoid them too, because I mean, at first when everything went down, everybody in my family was like, just come home. They're like, just come home, and I was like, I can't do that. Like I already knew I didn't want to go back to the Kingdom Hall. And I was like, I can't just come home. Like, I didn't want to give up also. Like, I felt like a loser for, like, moving back in with my parents or something. And so, things just got worse. Like I said, me and my ex, like, got together and started having sex. And I was just drinking all the time to deal with, like, how I felt. Because I knew, like, having sex before marriage was wrong. But at the same time, I justified it in my mind. And I was like, well, I might as well, because, like, I'm already a horrible person. Like, look at all these things. Like, look how, like, my own sister hates me. And it's just, like, me and my sister were super close growing up, too. And then, like, things just changed as time went on or whatever. And, that's a whole other thing that's very sad. And I just felt super alone. And I think a part of me just wanted to, like, crawl deeper into that aloneness, And just, I don't know. All I knew how to do was drink. And then it got even worse, because I fell in with a coworker who was like an alcoholic. And like me and my boyfriend, my then boyfriend, were like fighting all the time, because he was always like playing video games until like 5 o'clock in the morning, keeping me awake. And then like he never wanted to have sex with me. And that was like really hard on me, because I gave him like my first time. And then like I felt so unwanted, because he didn't even want to be with me. And we would fight about that. And I just felt so ugly and like, unwanted and all this different stuff. And also, like, I wanted to get married, and I had this image that I thought, like, we were going to get married and stuff, like, and he wasn't even interested in getting married at all, and he would, like, scream at me, and, I would get upset and eventually scream back, and it was just very toxic. And so I fell in with this coworker at work who was an alcoholic, and she, like, we became best friends. And like I would stay the night at her house sometimes, and we would just drink, and I would just drink and drink and drink until I threw up. And like it was a whole thing, but she ended up physically assaulting me and slicing my arm. She got super drunk one night. I guess I'll back up a tiny bit, because I was tired of how things were going with my ex, and so I moved in with her, and she moved out of her boyfriend's house, and she had a couple kids too, and so we moved in together. And well, anyways, I realized that was a mistake pretty quickly. She was like binge drinking all the time. And like while I was using alcohol to like cope, I was not like I didn't want to do that all the time. Like I would drink like, maybe I would have like 3 beers a night or something. And it wouldn't be like I was getting trashed. I was just more like I don't know. I mean, that's still not good, but, and then occasionally, like maybe on the weekends or whatever, I would like drink harder stuff and actually, maybe get a little trashed sometimes. And I would get trashed too, don't get me wrong, but um it wasn't like every single night. It was definitely like daily I would drink, but and sometimes I wouldn't though. It just depended on what was happening or if it was available or whatever. But I quickly realized like that was her like main thing. Like my main thing was like the eating disorder and like cutting myself and stuff, and her main thing was like drinking, like really drinking. And she started bringing dudes over to our apartment like with her kids there, and like I could hear them like doing stuff in the living room, and it was just totally not the type of lifestyle that I wanted at all. And like eventually one night she got super drunk and sliced my arm to the bone, and I had to go to the emergency room and get 10 staples, and it was super traumatic. And so and it's not like she attacked me or something. It was like me and her started drinking together that night, even though I didn't want to. I had to work in the morning, and I was like, but she was like, come on. So she had a bottle of vodka, and I was like, okay. And, as we're hanging out, I'm drinking a little bit, but I didn't want to get drunk. Like, I was already I don't think I was physically feeling all that great. And I was like, I really don't want to be, like, hungover for my shift tomorrow. So, I was drinking, like, a little bit. But she was, like, slamming shots, and I was trying to, like, talk her down. Like, and I was like, make sure you're drinking water. Like, she was already, like, slurring her words. Well, she takes out a knife and starts cutting her leg. And, I know how that is like, obviously, and, like, what that feels like and stuff. And I was like, please don't cut yourself. Like, if you're going to cut anyone, like, cut me if you feel like you need to cut someone. And, like, she sliced my arm, yeah, to the bone. Stitches were not enough. It was staples. And, at the time, she was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Like, I don't know. She was just super drunk. Like, I don't think she knew, like, how the pressure, or it was stupid. But, yeah, she really cut me, like, extremely deep. And it was disgusting. Like, we had to call my ex to come in the middle. It was, like, the middle of the night. And he came and took me to the emergency room. I could not calm down. I was, like, freaking out. And, I didn't want her to get in trouble. I already had, my arm was, like, full of cuts and stuff anyway. So I was, like, I decided I didn't want to, I wasn't going to press charges or something. Like, because it wasn't, like, malicious intent that she cut me or whatever. And, so I told the hospital staff, like, that that I cut myself, and they kept questioning me about it because, when you cut yourself that deeply, it's like there's usually some smaller cuts around it or like something, and it was like a huge laceration. So they were like, they kept questioning me and stuff. And even my ex was like, he was like, this doesn't make sense because you've been doing really good not cutting for like months, and all of a sudden, like, there's this huge, it was like no other cut that I had either. Like, it's not like any of my scars even resembled like this huge, crazy, like, flaying open of my arm. And before I had gone to the emergency, like, she stayed back at our place when I went to the emergency room. And, she had promised me she was going to pay for the emergency room bill. And, she was scared, and, I was like, dude, don't worry. Like, I'm not going to tell anybody, okay? Like, I'll just say that I cut my own arm or whatever. And, I even lied to my ex at the time, too. And I don't know. I'm too loyal, I guess, like, honestly. But, I cared about her. Like, even though, like, things were not going great living with her, it's like I wasn't trying to, like, ruin her life or something, I guess. And because I was obviously to blame as well, by telling her that. I mean, I don't know. But anyways, my ex like was like side-eyeing the whole situation too, because it was just very weird, and he was like, this doesn't add up. And the next day we were she was not home, so we were home together at my place. And my ex was kind of laying there with me in the bed, and I just admitted everything to him. I was like, because he's like, I don't understand why you would do this, because we hadn't even really been fighting, like, or anything, like things were actually going all right. And I was like, well, I didn't do it. And he's like, what are you talking about? Are you saying that she did it? And I was like, yeah. And I admitted everything to him. And I cried. And he was like, you have to move out, dude. He's like, this is ridiculous. Like, and so I told her, like, that day, I was like, I can't stay here. And I moved out. And we continued to be friends. Like, I forgave her, and she was very apologetic. And then it wasn't that much longer after that, me and my ex moved closer to where that apartment was, out of his brother's house that we were living in. And so I would walk over to her place sometimes. Like, I didn't really hang out with her much because, like I said, I wasn't down with her lifestyle. And, but one day, like, she invited me to hang out, and we hadn't really hung out in forever since that whole, like, incident happened. So I was like, okay, we'll hang out. And, we were drinking. I made some food. She knew I had an eating disorder. Like, I didn't hide that at all from her, like, because I didn't care, and she didn't care. And we were both, like, messed up together or whatever. And so I made some macaroni and cheese, and then I was in the bathroom purging, and I hear her, like, open the door, and, I was, like, pretty drunk, I'm not, like, crazy drunk, but, like, she was, like, pretty drunk. Like, she was pretty trash, to be honest with you, but she comes in, and, like, as I'm leaning over the toilet, like, purging, she starts putting her hands on me. And, like, she started groping my breasts, and I was like, what are you doing? Stop. And I pushed her off of me. And, I got, like, drool and stuff all over my hands, so I'm trying to get to the sink to, like, clean myself up a little bit. And she was a bigger person, too. Like, she's, like, overweight, and, like I said, I'm, like, skinny, and, I'm not, like, that muscular, really. I'm a girl. So, she was larger than me, like, physically. And, she starts putting her hands all over my butt. And I was trying to elbow her off and everything. And I was like, what are you doing? And before I know it, she was shoving her hands down my pants. She shoved her hand down the front of my pants. And excuse me, that's when and then, like, I tried to physically get her off of me, and then, like, I whipped around so I could try to push her, and, like, she tries to kiss me. She's trying to kiss me, like, really aggressively, and her hands were all over my boobs. And, like, it was so disgusting. Like, and I was shocked because, like, I never had any, I mean, like, she had said things to me before, like, that I'm beautiful, or, like, different stuff, when we're drunk. But you know how drunk people are. Like, they're always like, you're so beautiful. They say stupid stuff. I didn't think that, like, she was, like, into me or something, And, after all the times we ever hung out, like, that, she never expressed, like, anything like that. So it was just very weird and shocking to me. And, yeah, she's, like, all over me, trying to kiss me, putting her hands on me, and I, like, my mind went blank, and I was so shocked, like, and just disturbed. And, like, as soon as I could think to do anything, I shoved her with everything that I could, like, off of me. And I said, like, get the F off of me or something. I grabbed all my stuff out of there and I left. I left and I walked home at 3 o'clock in the morning. Because I was going to stay the night that night, and we were just going to, like, you know, drink and, like, watch movies on the couch or whatever. And, like, you know, even as I was walking, like, running out, grabbing my stuff, she was like, I'm sorry, like, don't leave, hey, come on. And, like, she was, like, being so, it was not her in there. Like, when I say people change when they drink and, like, it's like a demon that takes over, it's like, yeah, because, like, the voice was different. Like, she had this look in her eyes that was very, like, disturbing. And I don't know, like, yeah, that's, like, sexual assault, you know? I mean, when you're like forcefully putting your hands on someone, I don't know what else to call it. And, like, I just remember I walked home at 3 o'clock in the morning, and, like, I got home, I was shaking the whole way home. And, like, I just, like, my ex was like, what are you I thought you guys were gonna stay the night together. And I was like, dude. And, like, I told him everything. And I just, like, was crying, and it was horrible, to be honest with you. Like, and after that, she, you know, she messaged me and stuff and apologized, and she's like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, and whatever. But I was like, I'm done, dude. I'm done. Like, I'm not gonna do this. Like, I'm not gonna be in this freaking, like, toxic, like, whatever this thing is. And, like, I broke off the friendship then and there. And, like, she was, like, my only friend at that time. And so then, yeah, I mean, you know, after that, like, I still kept drinking, though. I still kept, like, partying, um being in the toxic circle of crap with my ex. And eventually, um I throughout my whole, like, life, like, working life, I had, like, one string of, like, pretty much terrible jobs after the next, where, like, you know, it was like I was being yelled at home by my ex. Not every day, like, you know, some there were good times too. Like, there were some good times, but you know how it is in, like, a narcissistic relationship. It's like, unless that person's happy, like, you're not going to be happy either. Like, they will make your life miserable. They're gonna make things a problem, and they're gonna take everything out on you because you're there, and be their emotional punching bag. And so that's what I was dealing with at home. And then at work too, like, you know, I would get yelled at. I had a situation at work where I was forced to go on leave because, like, employee assistance program thing, because my employer found out I was cutting myself, so they forced me to go get, like, mentally evaluated and all this stuff. And, like, eventually, though, I did stop cutting myself, I think when I was about 26, I want to say 26. Maybe it was even a little bit before, the 24, 25. Because I just liked drinking better. Eventually, like, I did want to stop cutting myself too, but it was really difficult to do that. So I cut myself for, like, 11 or 12 years. And yeah, I think I stopped when I was 24, the more I think about it. But the eating disorder went the whole time. And, eventually dealing with things at work, which were always, like, stressing me out, dealing with things at home, like, you know, I was, like, crying all the time. I would try to break up with my ex, and then he would, like, talk me back into staying. And it would just happen again and again and again. And I didn't have anyone to turn to, because by then, like, my family wasn't really talking to me. And then eventually, when I was around, like, 26, I finally started because even though I left Jehovah's Witnesses, I never researched into, like, the doctrine or anything. I still believed it. I just didn't want to, like, attend the meetings and fool with it anymore. And, you know, my parents were pretty mad about me not going to meetings, and so they didn't really talk to me much. They didn't really want to talk to me that much. They would still talk to me though. But they didn't really like call me all the time or something. It would be like maybe we wouldn't talk for a couple months or something, and then they would call for something to check on me or whatever, and vice versa. Like sometimes I would call them, whatever. But I lost that like closeness that I had with my family that I had before I moved out. Even though things were like messed up, like with my mom and stuff, like me and my brothers would always talk, but it was different after I moved out and wasn't going to meetings anymore. They were kind of like soft shunning me. So instead of like full blown shunning me, they would just shun me like a little, and kind of avoid me like that way. And, well, so you're not allowed to research anything in that religion when you are a Jehovah's Witness. Like, the only research you're allowed to do is within their own materials, and anything else, like, if you Google Jehovah's Witness, it's completely forbidden. And if they find out you're doing something like that, like, you will get disfellowshipped. Because they tell you that, oh, there's so many satanic lies on the internet, there's so many apostate lies. When someone leaves the religion and speaks out against it, maybe, like, reveals information or something, that doesn't make them look good or doesn't paint them in the best light, they label that person an apostate. And to them, it's literally the worst thing you can do. It's worse than anything you can do. And you're basically working in league with the devil and all this different stuff. And they're like horribly afraid of these kind of people because, to them, they're worse than a murderer, a child molester, or anything like that. And it's like the one unforgivable thing, right, is like leaving Jehovah and then talking about his organization or whatever. And so researching was a huge no-no outside of the religion. But as time went on, like, I'm a curious person. I got curious, and I would hear stuff here and there, and I was like, I'm out of the religion. Like, I can actually look into this stuff. Because I didn't really know. Like, I believed it still. I just, like I said, I didn't go or really, like, adhere to the commands or whatever, the rules anymore. And I decided, I was like, I'm gonna research this. Like, I want to know, like, if it's true. Because I really didn't know. And I had never known anything else. Like, I never looked into any other religions. I never looked into any other beliefs that people had. I didn't know why people believed the things that they did. I was raised super sheltered, and I grew up only knowing that one thing and only being exposed to that one thing. So I had no idea, and I was curious. And so I started looking into the doctrine and pretty quickly realized it's total BS. So, like, I only had to do a little bit of research and verify some different things. And then it's like, the more research that I did, I just kept finding more and more inconsistencies, lies, just everything. Like, it's so crazy. And like, I'm going to be making videos about this. I'm making this video because I have time right now and I need to do it before, like, I don't have time. You know what I mean? Like, while I have a minute, like, I want to make this video. But usually when I'm going to make a video, I'm going to do like an outline so I can stay more on topic and like actually lay this stuff out for everyone, because it's important to know like why the doctrine is false, and like why it is just a cult, and how they actually deny Jesus, and they even have a ritual where they make all their members deny partaking of the communion and partaking of the body and the blood of Jesus Christ every single year, which is called the Passover. And that's actually a huge ritual of denying the communion on a mass scale, and it's really satanic. But, when you're a member, you just have no idea about any of this stuff. And, like, I didn't know any of this stuff. But I ran into all kinds of crazy information that honestly sickened me to my core, because I believed all this stuff for my entire life. And all of a sudden, I was, like, hit with this wall of, like, truth. And it it shattered me, like, because I had all these like innate beliefs about who God was and like who I was, and like on some level, and having your whole faith like rocked like that is just really, really disturbing. And I couldn't talk to anyone about it. I knew that I couldn't tell my parents about it. Like, I talked to my ex about it, and he's like, yeah, I told you that was like a cult, like, he was like not surprised, but I was completely shaken. And already, like, whatever thin like string of relationship I had maybe with God was just completely annihilated in that moment. And my mom was molested the whole time she was growing up in that religion by her elder grandfather. And I knew about that since I was a little kid, and it always bothered me. And learning more and more about the religion and how many people are molested or raped or sexually abused in other ways by elders or high up members in the congregations. And not only is it not dealt with, it's allowed and swept under the rug. And like, I just came upon story upon story of people like sharing their testimony exactly like stuff like my mom's. And how my mom even contacted the governing body in Bethel, which is like their headquarters up in New York, and they sent her a letter back saying, oh, it's been, Jehovah's dealt with it, just because her abuser had died. But she was like, what about all the people in the congregation who like allowed, like, shouldn't we find out if because he molested a bunch of other people, a lot of, those predators typically have at least 120 victims in their lifetime. And they do not just do that to one person. That's not how that works. A person like that is a predator. And my mom had told her dad, who I think was an elder at the time, other people knew. Anyways, like, my mom was very upset about that at the time, but I guess let it slide or whatever, and like got over it, because she still is a Jehovah's Witness to this day. But that was never dealt with. Her pain and heartache and all that stuff was never dealt with by that religion. And well, it turns out, yeah, they do that all the time. And not only do they find out that there's a molester in the Kingdom Hall, they don't alert the police to alert, like, hey, because it's like regular people are around this person too. Like, they live in a neighborhood with children around or whatever. Anyways, it's a whole thing. But, as I was waking up, there was this thing going on called the Australian Royal Commission, which was all about researching into and interview. They actually brought in for interrogation legally. There were legal proceedings, and the governing body had to answer questions for this Australian Royal Commission because they were having so many people complain and report molestations. Families and stuff were reporting this. They were getting shunned by their families for speaking out and everything like that too. Because most people, like, it happens to them and then they just sweep it under the rug because they don't want to end up losing everyone they know and love over, like, this thing, and they don't want to have to keep reliving it, and it's a whole mess. It's like a whole thing. And so that was going during my, like, awakening or whatever from the religion, and I was posting the recordings on Facebook. I was posting the hearings and information about it on Facebook because I was like, wow, you know how it is when you wake up from something that, like, everybody else, like, believes in or whatever, and you're like, people need to know about this. Like, this is important, and, like, I want to expose it, especially because I grew up in it. So it's like, I feel a responsibility to other people to, like, educate them on this so they don't fall into the same, like, messed up crap as I did. And so I started posting stuff on Facebook, and I had my Facebook, like, my parents and my family were not on my Facebook, and my stuff was on private. But somehow they found out, and my mom sent me a screenshot of a post that I made, and was like, what is this apostate crap that you're posting? And like, that was it, you know? And because I was like, it's not apostate crap. Like, this is actual stuff that's going on in that religion. And like, if you actually look at what they're saying and like watch the videos of your governing body elders, like the members, answering these questions, like, the whole thing, I mean, look it up. It's all on YouTube. It's like very disturbing. And it's so heartbreaking, like the victims and everything. And just how many people are involved, and how not only that, but they keep a record of the pedophiles. Like, there's like a master pedophile record that the Kingdom all has, and they were trying to get them to release it to the authorities. They wouldn't release it to the authorities. It was like a whole disgusting thing. And like I said, like, as someone who was born and raised into that, I felt that, and that my mom was molested and abused like that, I felt like a deep responsibility to share that information. Because I care about the truth, and I care about my mom, and I care about people, and I care about the people who are stuck in that religion and that think they're doing the right thing and they're not. And, you know, I didn't deny it at all. I was like, it's not apostate lies. Like, and I started laying out some facts. And, you know, I would say my relationship with my parents was already on pretty thin ice already as it was, because I had went vegan, maybe a year prior to this. It probably wasn't even a year prior to, and they're like super anti, you know, I never tried to force anything on them or anything, but they acted like I was a crazy person and all this different stuff. And, you know, I don't know. It was just very weird. My dad's super like closed-minded about stuff like that, and his reaction was like extremely angry, and you know, it was almost like I came out as gay or something. I don't know. It was very weird, like, because yeah, that's something they would have also, like, you know, but that's not even anything in the doctrine, like, for Jehovah's Witnesses, like, that you can't stop eating animals. It's like, what's the big deal? But I don't want to eat animals. Like, I never liked meat growing up, and you know, I eventually like forced myself to like it with sauces and stuff. But you know, research is just a super important part of my life. I researched into the animal industries hard, and decided, wow, like, I don't want any part of this. And like, you know, it's been 7.5 years that I've been living this way, and like, I'm not dead, like, I'm still alive and fine. So but I mean, that's a whole other thing. But like, my point is, like, I was already like on thin ice with my parents with that, because they were just super super you know, my dad would like yell at me on the phone and stuff, and like make me cry, and it was just very weird. But just controlling, you know, I mean, that's a high control religious group that they're in. It, like, I feel like people in that religion are just, it tends to make a person narcissistic and controlling, is what I'll say. And so, you know, that's just one more area of my life, I guess, that they couldn't control me in, and they got upset. And so yeah, you know, my mom was like, what is this that you're posting? And I was like, well, you know, XYZ. I kind of like laid some stuff out. I was like, if you look at the video, like, it's not apostate stuff. Like, this is a trial. And like, you know, it seems like from your experiences, like, you'd be interested in knowing this stuff is going on in this religion that you're giving your whole life to. And, you know, she tells me I'm not her daughter anymore, and that I'm an apostate. And, you know, and then I get a text from one of my brothers, and saying the same thing. You know, he's like, what is this? And I explained to him, it's, you know, this is what it is. Like, this is why I shared it. This is why I feel the need to share it, because it's true. And I was like, you know, you should probably care about this too, because like, we're in this religion. I mean, not we, because I hadn't been in a long time by that point, years that I had not gone. I just kind of faded out. But they were in it like super hard. And you know, and like I said, when I was in it, I believed it. I got baptized when I was 16. And, you know, during that time, I had stopped cutting myself. And, like, I really meant it when I did the baptism. because I love God. But, then when I grew up more and learned all this stuff, it's like, wow. But anyways, and I was never disfellowshipped or anything. I just stopped going. I just didn't go anymore. So, that you have to attend to get disfellowshipped. And like, if you don't know what disfellowshipping is, that's when they cut you off, and no one can talk to you. That's when they shun you. And so my dad sent me a text, and he said, you disgrace the brothers, and you, I don't remember everything, but he, basically I'm not his daughter, and, that's that. Like, he's not talking to me anymore. And, I responded to him and made it very clear, like, that's your decision. Like, I don't want to not talk to you anymore. And, I was like, that's very, like, because what can I say? It's like, wow. He didn't even let me try to explain anything to him. He didn't have a conversation with me. He didn't, like, give me a call. He just sent me a text and said, I'm done with you, and threw me away like a piece of trash. And, my whole life, I had been hearing these voices that I was a piece of crap, that nobody wanted me around, that I was a burden on my whole family, that everybody would be happier if I wasn't here, yada, yada, yada. And then all of a sudden, wouldn't you know it, all of that stuff was just completely confirmed in the space of like a couple hours, And so it wasn't just the impact of like losing that religion, like losing my spiritual beliefs and my religious beliefs, but like I lost my entire family. 2 brothers and a sister and both my parents. I'm never speaking to you again, is what they told me. And it's been about 7 years. And, I've tried to contact them. I've texted them. I've called them. I found out my mom was in the hospital and nobody told me, because she has multiple sclerosis. And, I have their phone numbers, or like what I think, maybe they changed their numbers. I don't know. But, I sent her flowers. I tried to call her. I would just cry, Because no matter what happened, I always loved my family. Like, I know that they're not perfect, but I always loved them. Like, I never wanted anything like this or planned for anything like this. And for them to just throw me away was super heartbreaking. And like I said, it was like every single thought in my mind and every demonic voice in my mind that would tell me, like, that I'm just worthless was completely confirmed. And after that happened, I just totally gave up on life. I mean, honestly, things were awful with my relationship. I was already engaged to my ex, but like, he really didn't want to get married. He just like kind of, I don't know why he didn't propose to me or anything. We just agreed like maybe we should get married, He was watching a lot of Jordan Peterson, and so was I. I already believed in marriage and wanted to get married, but suddenly like he took an interest in it and was like, yeah, I guess we can get married. If you want to pick out a really cheap ring, like, and, I loved him. Like, I did love him. Like, I don't think he ever really loved me. Maybe, like, part of him did, but I think it was more, like, the appearance that it gave off of being with me, or using me for, like, when he wanted something, I was there. Because I was giving so much in that relationship and getting almost nothing. Like I said, he would withhold sex from me. And it was just really difficult. But, and I made a lot of mistakes. And I wasn't my best at all, obviously. I was like a total mess in that relationship too. But I always tried to make things work. And so we were engaged at that point. But I just decided, like, I was like, I'm going to amp up the eating disorder. Like, I wanted to starve myself to death. I was like, this is it. I have no reason to live at all. Like, nothing. I don't have anything. Nobody loves me. Like, Could I ever say that I thought my ex loved me? I mean, he would tell me, like, occasionally that he loves me, but I didn't feel it, you know? And my parents, they obviously didn't love me. I think they do love me, but, to me, back then, that was more than proof enough that nobody loved me or cared about me. And so I amped up the eating disorder, and, as you amp up an eating disorder and start trying to starve yourself even more, guess what? You will eat. Like, your body has a very weird way of making you eat, like when you are starving to death or starving in general. And so, that's the first time in my life when the occasional purging, like when I accidentally would eat too much, became obsessively planned day-long binges. And, I would wake up at like 5 o'clock in the morning because my ex went to work really early. So I would wake up super crazy early as soon as he left. And then I would take an Uber and I'd go to Taco Bell. I'd go to McDonald's. I wasn't vegan yet at this point, but, so this was a little bit before then, but like, so I mean, the bulimia stuff started before I was, cut off from my parents or stuff, but it definitely amped up like, around this time. And, I would take an Uber to, Taco Bell, McDonald's, the grocery store, like Walmart, and I would just get as many groceries, as much fast food as I could. I would watch shows and binge eat all day. I would binge until I couldn't eat anything else and I would feel sick, and then I would go purge into a Ziploc bag because our toilet sucked and I couldn't flush anything down the toilet without it getting clogged. So I would purge into a gallon Ziploc bag. And I'd be drinking, like, I'd be getting drunk, at the same time. And I would just fill up that gallon trash Ziploc bag. Sometimes, I don't know, by the end of my binge, I'd have like 2-gallon Ziploc bags. Probably more some days. And, I would just do it over and over and over and over and over again. Like, I would go eat, I would go throw up. I would go eat, I would go throw up. I would go eat, I would go throw up. I would go eat, I would go throw up all day for hours. And sometimes my throat would start bleeding. My eyes would get super bloodshot. I think I popped a blood vessel in my eye one time. And by the end of it, I would feel so numb and so exhausted. But it was like, that was like what I wanted. Because by the end of it was when I would feel calm. And I would just go to sleep for a really long time. And it was really dangerous too, because I wouldn't just purge. Like, I did something called rinsing. And which is like, when you're done, like, with everything, you keep just chugging a ton of water, and then you throw up. Like, you keep making yourself, even when everything looks like it's gone, you chug more water, and then you throw up more, until, like, there's literally nothing. Like, it's not even like the water runs with bile, like, or the vomit has bile. There's nothing. And when you do that to your body, you're so depleted of electrolytes and hydration afterwards. You're like this is how actually people with eating disorders have heart attacks, because you're so dehydrated at that point. You can easily have a heart attack, and you can just go into cardiac arrest and your body can shut down completely. But that's what I would do every single time. Like, I would always, every single time, and I would do one of these big daily binges like 2 or 3 times a week. And sometimes I wouldn't be able to do them because I could only do it if my ex wasn't home. And one day he even came home during one of my things, but I played it off and was able to, like, hide my stuff, kind of. I think he probably knew something was up. And eventually I told him everything that was going on because I broke down and I was so tired of living that way. And it was torture because, even like I wanted to do it, but I didn't want to do it at the same time. I was addicted to doing it. And from jumping from anorexia into bulimia, where it was going on that way for a couple years, I would say, where I was doing it like that. And at first the binges were like very few and far between. Like it was just like sometimes I would binge like that. And then it became like I said, like 2 or 3 times a week I was doing that. And it was also extremely expensive and we were pretty broke. And just super unhealthy, but I just didn't care. And also, like, me and my ex would fight and I would just get super trashed and go walk down the street at night. I would walk the trails in the middle of the night because I didn't care. I was like, I don't care if I get stabbed. I don't care if I get raped. I literally don't care. Like, I don't give a crap. And, God was literally looking out for me all of those times. And I remember this one time there were several of these moments, but me and my ex were fighting. He was like screaming at me. I, ran out of the house and slammed the door. And I went to the gas station that was near our place. And I just bought a bunch of snacks, a bunch of ice cream, a bunch of whatever. And I locked myself in the gas station bathroom. And I sat on the floor. And I just ate and ate and ate and ate and ate everything while I cried. And I couldn't stop crying. I couldn't calm down. And I just kept eating. And I felt so disgusting sitting there on the freaking gas station bathroom floor. It's like the grossest place to be. And, I threw up everything. And I just kept throwing up. And then, I looked at myself in the mirror when I was done with everything. I was just like, who am I? This is not who I am. Like, this is not, it's almost like you don't even, you don't know who you are. You don't know how it got to this point where you feel so worthless and disgusting and like that you're doing these things to yourself and you know that it's horrible. And like people were already treating me like crap. And the worst part was like, I was treating myself worse than anybody else was. And saying that I was like soothing myself or whatever. And like, there were a few of those moments. Like I remember one time I was super upset. I was crying. I left the house. I drove to Domino's and I ordered the biggest, like extra large cheese crust pizza. And I sat there in my car and I literally ate the entire thing in 10 minutes. Literally. I ate the entire thing. And then I went into Fred Meyer across the street into the grocery store and got more food. And I went into the bathroom and I felt so sick. Like, you guys, you cannot eat I don't know how in God's name I ate an extra large pizza, let alone in 10. I was just like, I was so upset. And like, that's what I did when I was upset or whatever. Like it was super gross. And like, I would get cuts and stuff on the side of my mouth from like rushing eating food. Like shoving food in my mouth and stuff, or like cuts from, I would have like wounds on my knuckles from my teeth because I would be like rushing to like purge. And man, it's just crazy because like I haven't been in that space for a really long time, so this is just like bringing it all back. But yeah, I went in the bathroom and continued to eat more and more and throw up again and again and again and again. And like, again, I remember looking in the mirror after I was done. And I just heard this voice saying, Suzanne, this isn't you. This isn't you. And like, I was like, I know this isn't who I am. Like, it was horrible. it was so heartbreaking. And I think, it took me a really long time to really, really be able to allow myself to feel how much pain I was in over everything. How much pain I was in over the mistakes I made, over the judgments like people would have on me, over the overly critical childhood, over the neglect in my childhood, over different things that I had lived through. I was doing all that stuff because I was running away from those feelings. And I was running away from God because, I was like, how could God ever love someone like me when I'm doing all these things? My family doesn't even want anything to do with me. It was just a lot, that I never had allowed myself to feel. And like after that stuff happened, like after I looked in the mirror and like, I feel like God spoke to me in that moment. After so long of me like turning my back on him and being like, you know what? I hate myself and that's it. Like I'm gonna kill myself and, burn everything down, and I don't care anymore because nobody cares about me. So why should I care about me either? And that was like a turning point for me though. And so I told my ex everything, and I got clean of the eating disorders. Like it took me a long time. Like it was a process. Like I tried and I would fail. It was just like cutting was the same thing. Like I would try to quit, and like a couple months I would be good, and then I would fail, and then I would be good, and then like, it was a process. But I was able to get myself together because I just started I'm obsessed with researching, so I just started researching different things that I could do, and watching recovery stuff. And instead of feeding my mind on the like forums, on the eating disorder forums, I started getting on like recovery group forums and realizing like this is possible. It's not something I have to live with for the rest of my life. And it took a really long time for me to be okay with eating food again. And praise God, like now I have a totally amazing relationship with food. Like I said, I eat a lot and like all the time. So I want to make more videos about that too. I want to make more videos about healing from things like that. And I wish back then I would have had a relationship with God to rely on, but I didn't. Because it would have been a lot easier instead of me just like doing it on my own and struggling so much. But even God, I didn't feel like I had a relationship with God, but he was right there with me the whole time. It's just, he doesn't step in unless we ask for his help and allow him, right? And like at that point, I was like, I thought of God. I was like, I don't think there's a God actually. Like, I think there's like the universe. Like, so that became my thing is like, I would like ask the universe for things and like, that kind of whole like new agey type thing. And, hang on, I'm gonna pause it. So yeah, I got healed, of my eating disorder. And by that point, so, now I'm finally not cutting. I'm finally not having my eating disorder. I was still having a huge problem with alcohol, though. And I started smoking a ton of weed. Because now, like I said, I had all these feelings that were coming up, especially when I was, when you're trying to get healthy and you stop doing a really destructive, like, coping mechanism, all those feelings that you've been running away from start coming up, right? And it's like really unpleasant, to say the least. And so, yeah, I started smoking weed to deal with that. And, I was having nightmares, a ton of nightmares. And, like I told you, I had been having sleep problems my whole life. And part of the problems why I wasn't able to sleep is because I would have these super demonic nightmares. I would dream I was getting attacked by demons. I was getting dragged out of my bed by demons. I was getting chased by people. I had sleep paralysis from the time I was a teenager. And that's horrifying. Like, if you've ever had to deal with sleep paralysis, it's no joke. Like, that's really scary. And it would happen to me all the time. And, like, it made me super paranoid about sleeping, even though, like, I love sleeping. I love being rested, and it just, like, it got to the point around this time where the dreams and the nightmares were so violent. I would wake up crying, I would wake up shaking uncontrollably, I would wake up soaked in sweat, and like during all of this stuff, I should mention I was on a buttload of antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds for years, and I was able to hide my eating disorders from my doctors because like I said, I'm just a naturally skinny person anyway, and because of the bulimia, I never really got like super crazy underweight. Um, I think the lowest weight I had wasn't even under 100 pounds, so it's not like I looked like I was dying or something. Um, and yeah, like with the bulimia, like I said, my weight is probably almost the same now as it was back. I mean, maybe it's a little bit, you know, maybe 15 pounds. I don't know. I don't weigh myself. And that's part of my recovery is like, I don't weigh myself. And I haven't weighed myself in like 7 years. So, and I have no desire to weigh myself whatsoever. So, um, it's just toxic for me. And like I said, I was obsessed with the numbers. So I don't feel the need to know my weight. Um, but yeah, my weight wasn't even that much lower than it is right now. And like I can still pretty much fit almost all my clothes and everything like that. And so my doctors never knew about the eating disorders. I never had any desire to tell them because I didn't want to get rid of my eating disorder, Like I said, that was like my friend. It was my coping mechanism. That was what I did to deal with life and to deal with all of the negative emotions that I was feeling. And so I would go to the doctor though about my depression, my anxiety, and the nightmares. And eventually a doctor diagnosed me with PTSD from like growing up in the religion and my parents fighting and verbal abuse and neglect and having narcissistic parents or whatever. And so he put me on this medication that they typically give to like combat veterans and stuff. And well, anyways, it worked for me, and that was the first time I actually started being able to sleep. I think I was like 27. And it was just incredible. Like it would really put me to sleep and I wouldn't dream. And then also like, so that's around this time that I discovered weed too. And up until then, like I had smoked here and there, but I didn't really like the way that it made me feel because it made me super paranoid, and I'm already like really paranoid anyway. But I had started kind of doing it more when I was alone, and I realized that I really liked it a lot because like the more I would get used to the sensation, I realized it was actually soothing to me. And I realized also when I would go to sleep, I wouldn't dream at night when I was high. So more and more I would rely on weed, and I just became a stoner. Like I just became like a huge stoner. And it helped me like maintain like a chill vibe without like having to do all these different things that are actually like super destructive. And so it actually helped me a lot for a long time. I mean, you know, transitioning at least out of the eating disorders, which is super like toxic and actually dangerous where you can die, and cutting yourself too. Um I don't know, like I always just rely on some kind of substance, man. Like it's so crazy how my life has been because that running away from the emotions, like even when I was on all these medications, I've probably been on every single antidepressant like you can think of. And eventually, like, I would get on, and then like I'd be having panic attacks, so my doctor would switch me, and then I'd be having like super bad constipation, so my doctor would switch me again. And I went through the gauntlet over the years of different antidepressants and anti-anxieties until like the doctor put me on Wellbutrin, and I was on that probably for like three or 4 years, I want to say. And I also liked that one because while I was still on it, I still when I first started it, I still had my eating disorder, and like I heard it makes you lose weight, so like that's one big reason I wanted. And the doctor had me on the highest dosage too, which I kind of made sure of because I was like, I want to be on the highest dosage so I can lose weight. And although, I mean, that's not what I said to them, but you know, every time I would be like, I think it's working, but like I feel like, you know, I still feel depressed. And like even if I didn't, I would say that because like I wanted to be on the highest dosage. So I was on the highest dosage for, you know, however many years. And eventually I weaned myself off of that, though. I weaned myself off of because as through this journey, like as I like progressed and got myself clean of things, like I realized like I started doing a lot of inner work and healing. Like I actually started reading, and I started being kind to myself and treating myself like a friend. And I totally rebuilt the relationship that I had with myself. And it took years to do, where, you know, because I had all of these deeply ingrained like things that, you know, I would say to myself, and things that, because after the demons were whispering these things, eventually I accepted it, and I would be saying them to myself even too, just out of habit. And over the years, I finally like I started getting healthier with myself and feeling good about myself, and you know, not hating myself. Like I genuinely started to care about myself, and I developed this situation where I was like learning to forgive myself, learning to accept myself, learning to be kind to myself, and just developing a healthy relationship with myself. And I was pouring all of my obsessive energy into that all of a sudden, you know, all of the energy I had been using to like hate on myself and torture myself, I started using it and focusing it on building up myself and actually like seeing how good of a person, like how, okay, it's like, how can I make myself better every single day? Like I started just getting obsessed with making myself better, and like I'm still like that today. Like I'm literally obsessed with making myself the best person that I can be, because I think that's what everybody should do. And you know, I'm not gonna ever stop doing that because it's just a healthy, wonderful habit to have. And like I'm not talking about in a way of like being destructive and being like, I'm not good enough, I need to be. It's not like that. It's just like I can do better, and when I'm better, like it's better for me and for everyone around me. So why wouldn't I want that, you know? And I'm happier too knowing that I'm trying my best every single day, and that, you know, if there's any chinks in the armor, so to speak, like I'm able to patch those up and move along. And you know, I don't want to be a weak person. I don't want to be a negative person or a bad person or like a dishonest person. Like I don't want any of those things. And you know, I think really taking a look at yourself with the idea of nurturing yourself to become better is just absolutely wonderful. It's such a good habit to do, and we're called to do that. You know, you can't just be like, "Oh, I suck," and then just like keep sucking. Like that's like the worst thing you can do. But yet, like, that's what most people end up doing. They're like, oh, I suck at life, so I'm just gonna, well, like, I guess I just suck at life. Like, I'm just gonna accept that. Like, no. Like, I'm not gonna accept that, because I'm the only one that can change that situation. And, like, I actually have the power to affect change in my life. And, you know, by the grace of God, that's what I'm gonna do. So, like, if anything, all these lessons and hardships and sufferings have taught me, it's that, you know, I can use all of those things to either hate on myself and become worse and just get bogged down and super depressed and, you know, have a horrible, miserable life where, like, things never get better and there's no hope at all. Or I can use it to build upon and gain wisdom and learn to do better and be like, you know, like, I didn't do good in that situation. Like, let's try to do better next time. Let's do this next time that happens. Like, let's say this next time that happens. And, like, literally, like, I'll sit there and give myself a pep talk, or I'll sit there and give myself a stern talking to if I need to. And, like, you know, I'll be like, like, we need to have a little talk about, like, the way that you're acting, you know, to myself, because, like, you have to parent yourself. You do. You can't just be like, well, this is how I am. So it's like, sorry, world, that I'm like a piece of crap person or whatever. Like, that's not good enough, you know? And like, for me, that's not good enough. It's not acceptable to just be like a jerk, or like take things out on other people, or take them out on your, because you can be a jerk to yourself too. Like, I was not like necessarily being a jerk to anyone else, but I was being a jerk to myself, you know what I'm saying? And very abusive to myself, and that's not healthy either. And yeah, so like, you know, I just started getting super obsessed with becoming the best person that I could be. And during this time, me and my ex got married. Things were going pretty well. Like, I was the happiest that I had been in a long time. He was trying to do better. Oh, my current boyfriend's calling me. Okay. I had to do some stuff, and I was talking to my boyfriend on the phone, and then I actually recorded the whole rest of my testimony, and then I found out when I went to upload it that it didn't have any sound at all. So it's like, man. I got ready to go to bed though, wash my face, and I'm gonna give the rest of my testimony, make sure the sound's working. So yeah, around this time, me and my ex got married, and things were going kind of better for us, but it didn't really last. I want to say it was like maybe the first year of our marriage was like different, and then after that things just went back to the way they were. Things were getting really bad again. You know, it was just toxic. And yeah, it was the pandemic that like brought everything to light, I think, because suddenly I had all this time to research and look into all the things that I never allowed myself to look into. And I started looking into spirituality, like super deep. And I got into astrology. I got into alchemy. And I was looking in like at all of the esoteric, like hidden knowledge type things. I was researching into what secret societies believed in and like reading their books. Just everything. Like, I started doing transcendental meditation. I started listening to hypnosis. Like, it helped me sleep at night, so I would listen to different hypnosis videos, which please don't get involved in that, because it's like really messed up, and like it caused me a lot of problems. Totally gives you demons, like for real. And I was just exploring into like all the different spiritual things that I never let myself look at. And yeah, so the pandemic came. I had all this time. I was getting into new age stuff at that time, doing the hypnosis, doing meditation, into astrology. And like, yeah, they warn you about that stuff as Jehovah's Witnesses, but the thing is, like, I when I learned all their teachings were lies, I just threw all the teachings out. And I was like, I'm starting over from scratch now. And I'm just gonna, like, figure out for myself, like, what's truth and, like, what's not, you know? And I didn't believe in the Bible in those days either, because I just, like I said, I just threw everything out that I thought I knew about spirituality or religion or God. And I was like, I'm starting over from scratch or whatever. And so I was researching all into that. And then I've always been super into conspiracies and stuff too. And my ex was not. He was like super, he would always like call me crazy and different stuff. And so I could just never talk about it with him. But when the pandemic happened, like, hello, woo, my conspiracy, like, alarm bells went off. And I was researching into that like crazy. And just everything. Like, I just started researching, like, in every single thing that I could regarding every single thing that I could. And, sorry, I've just been talking for like hours at this. It's so great. Every time I try to make these videos, like, something happens. My other video was an hour long, and I'm so tired. It's like past 1 a.m. I know I look like crap because, like, I'm just tired, but I know that I need to record this because, like, it just keeps getting messed up, and I'm like, I need to get this out there. So I'm trying to get my thoughts together and remember, like, it sucks because I literally recorded, like, perfectly exactly what I wanted to say, and it's just gone. So I'm, like, frustrated. But yeah, so the pandemic happened, and, you know, me and my ex started being around each other more because I was home all the time. Like, I was home teleworking from my job on the computer. And around this time, like, I was doing research into EMFs and, like, radio frequencies and stuff as well, because I noticed they threw up, like, way more 5G towers in my town, and it was, like, freaking me out. And I mean, like I said, I'm like a paranoid person anyway, so I was like, why are these, like, suddenly showing up like crazy all around town? And you know, he said I was being crazy or whatever, but it turns out, like, well, I every time I was in our bedroom, like, I would start getting headaches, I would feel like I was being fried, like, I would feel my skin crawling, like, all these weird, like, symptoms. And outside of our bedroom, there were 5 smart meter, like, you know, those meters that the gas and the electric company or whatever monitors your energy use with. And they do emit, like, radiation and EMF frequencies that aren't good for you and are way above, like, what's supposedly safe for human beings. And the more I looked into it, I was like, not okay with sleeping next to that, you know? And so for years, like, me and my ex, like, did not sleep in the same bed. He would always sleep on the couch, and he said that it was because our bed hurt his back, and we tried getting different mattresses a couple times, and, like, he always just said it hurt his back, and it hurt me that he didn't sleep in the bed with me. Like, I always wanted him to sleep in the bed with me, and, like, my parents didn't sleep in the bed together. Like, my dad would always sleep on the couch because my mom snored. And, like, I never wanted a relationship like that. So that was, like, a huge strain for me to not even be able to, like, cuddle my partner or, like, be physically near them at night. And, you know, that was just tough on me. And, it was years and years, like, where that was going on. And so, well, when I found out about the smart meters outside of our home, I decided I wanted to start sleeping on the couch because I was like, I don't want to be near these meters, like, frying my brain all the time or whatever. And the very first time I went to sleep on the couch, he slept in the bed. and continued to sleep in the bed every single night. Like, I didn't go back to sleeping in the bed, and he always slept in the bed after that. And at that point, I was like, okay, like, you're a liar. And, you know, it was really a wake-up call for me, because I knew on some level, like, you know, he didn't love me, but that was just confirmation of everything, and really, like, kind of shook me awake in a way that I really needed. And then, you know, the more I kind of let my conspiracy side take over and explore, and, like, you know, talk about my interests and stuff, he would call me stupid, call me crazy, tell me I was losing my mind, tell me I was in a cult. And things just got worse and worse, you know? The more it awakened I became on that level, like, the worse our relationship got. And then, you know, the lack of sex, the lack of intimacy, it was just a lot of things. You know, he was lying to me about some other stuff too, and that I found out. And, you know, I also found out about narcissistic personality disorder, which explained everything, like, super perfectly. And, you know, things got to a point. I had warned him because things were really bad, and it crossed the line, and I was like, look, like, I was thinking, you know, he went out of town for a little bit and then came back, and I was like, I almost filed, like, for divorce. Like, you need to know that, like, I was literally going to file for divorce, but I'm giving you another chance and stuff. And things just didn't get better. And so, you know, one day I just lost it, and I was like, I want a divorce. Like, I'm done. I'm totally done. Like, I was crying, and, like, it was awful. Like, I left and told him he needs to leave, and, like, he left and moved out or whatever. So yeah, I divorced him, and, like, you know, that was super difficult to do all alone. And I cried every day for 3 weeks straight, just mourning, like, what I thought my life was going to be. And, you know, I never got married thinking I would get a divorce, like, ever. That's not something that I ever wanted to happen in my life. And we weren't even married 2 years. It was, like, just under 2 years. But we were together for 9. And, you know, our relationship was definitely not perfect, but I did love him, and, like, I tried to make things work, and I was trying to do all these different things all the time, reading books and, like, urging him to try new things and, like, just different stuff. And, you know, it just wasn't good for either of us, and it was the best decision, you know. And it was really, really hard, though, especially because I didn't have anybody to help me through the situation, to give me, like, advice. You know, that was really super difficult. But you know, and I took our cats. We had 2 cats together, and I got, like, custody of them, I guess you would say. And not long after he moved out and stuff, and I filed for divorce, like, I met my boyfriend, and I have no doubt that he was sent from God. Like, he's literally so amazing and so nice and just funny and goofy and sweet. And he's awesome, and he just happened to be a Christian. And, you know, I was totally not a Christian, like, when we met at all. And I didn't want anything to do with the whole, like, Christian lifestyle. I thought I was way smarter than any Christian. And I was super proud. Like, I had a ton of pride because I had researched deep into all these esoteric, like, knowledge, like secrets, theosophy and alchemy and philosophy. And I mean, not that there's anything wrong with philosophy, but like, I had expanded my mind to all these different, like, spiritual methods. And I thought I knew all the secrets or whatever, even though, like, every single one of those things that you look into, like, it's always a bottomless pit. Like, you open one door and then you keep going, you keep going, you keep going, and then you're faced with like 30 other doors where you're like, oh, I thought I was like at the end, and it's like, no, like, there's way more, like, and it just never ends. And like, there's no like definitive answer in any of that stuff. And it's like, you have to keep working and like doing things, and like, oh, just meditate more, like, just, do these things. Like, it's just exhausting. And so that's what I was into, though, when I met him, and he was just like, yeah, I love Jesus. Like, that was his whole, he's like, I love Jesus, like, I love God, like. And I was like, I was kind of like thinking to myself, like, ew, like, to be honest with you, like I said, the Jesus stuff like cringed me out. And so, but I mean, I was fine with that. If, I was like, that's your thing, like, that's fine. Like, I respect other people's beliefs and stuff. It's just like not what I believe, and it's like, as long as you don't try to make me believe that, like, we're good. And he didn't. I mean, like, we would have conversations and stuff and disagreements, but I feel like we were both pretty respectful of what one another believed. I mean, well, he really didn't like the stuff that I believed, but, we kind of made it work. But as time went on, I started getting, like, really badly demonically attacked. And it had always been pretty bad. Like I said, I would always have sleep paralysis, which is super freaky if you've ever experienced that. And for a long time, I had been hearing voices, like, in my mind, but also like next to me. Usually I'd be in bed, and sometimes it would wake me up. Like, I would hear someone say my name next to me. And it was always either my dad or my mom. One time I heard one of my brothers say dude. No, say hey dude, next to my ear, and it woke me up. I was like, but then there's nobody, super creepy. But usually it'd be my mom just saying my name, calling to me or something. I would never answer it because I was like, ew, like, that's super gross and creepy. But I would always hear, even when I was a teenager, that was happening to me. But that started happening to me way more. And by the time I had gotten with my boyfriend, like, I was meditating a lot. I started meditating. Once we were together, I started really meditating a lot. Like, I would get super baked and meditate for like 4 hours a day. And I was super into transcendental meditation. Like, I would play, like, certain frequencies of music and meditate and just go deep into it, and that was like my thing that I like to do. And I would have visions, I would have like spiritual experiences doing these meditations. But like I said, I never really felt like I was getting anywhere. Like, I always felt like I had to do more. It was like very exhausting. And I eventually, well, the demonic attacks just got worse and worse. Like, I would come downstairs and the back door would be open all on its own in the middle of the night. I would hear stuff all the time. We left town one time, and like, when I got back into town, my cats were locked into one of the rooms with no food, no water, and it appeared that they had been there for like days. They had been like going to the bathroom in a computer box that was in the room. And I felt terrified for them and I don't know if demons have the power to kill like your animals or anything, but I just was so afraid that I was gonna come home one day and like they wouldn't be there, like they would be dead or something. Or that, the door would fly open and they would run away or something. And like it got to the point where I didn't want to be at home because I would feel a presence when I was home alone, and I would end up sleeping in my car just to like feel safer. Like I would go drive somewhere and sleep in my car, but then I felt like scared for the cats, like I said. So I ended up giving my cats to my ex because I know that he loves the cats. And even though like, we parted ways and everything, and like I don't want anything to do with him personally, like I know that he loves the cats. And even though those cats were like my babies, like that's why I gave them to him, because I just couldn't stand the thought of them like being here and being like tormented or something. And so that's something that had to happen, I felt like. And so he did get the cats eventually. And yeah, things just kept getting worse for me, and I was having horrible nightmares, demonic nightmares, like hearing voices, all this stuff. And eventually what it really was for the first thing that kind of like led me to Christianity a little bit was like my boyfriend showed me the Prayers That Rout Demons book by John Eckhart, and which is an awesome book. But he would play it at night, like we'd put it on at night, and because I was so afraid to go to sleep at night. Like he showed me that book, and then I would put it on at night when I would go to sleep, and it really helped me. Like at first I was like, like I don't know how I feel about this, but the more I would put it on at night, like I found that it was very comforting, and I really liked it. So I was like, okay, like I kind of like this, like maybe it's not that bad. And so I would listen to that at night, and like the more I would listen to it, like I kind of felt like maybe there was something to this. And I started kind of watching like more Christian-y type videos on YouTube, whereas usually I would watch like, videos on like esoteric stuff or like spiritual stuff or more like new agey stuff. And instead I was like watching, different like people talk about like Jesus kind of. And, slowly but surely I was like, okay, like I can kind of see, like it was like reaching me, like slowly but surely over the course of like months. And I didn't tell my boyfriend that I was like listening to Christian YouTubers or anything like that, because I was like, I don't want to like, I don't know, I didn't want to like get his hopes up or like make him think that I was like changing my views or anything like that. Like I just wanted to see like what it was about. I was curious. And like I said, the book did actually make me feel better. Like listening to it at night was very comforting, to the point where I would actually like, I like every single night I would always throw it on. Like I'm like, oh, I gotta have where's my John Eckhart? And like I liked it a lot. And I'm used to listening to something at night when I go to sleep anyway, so like I just liked it. And I remember like the more time went on, I started like eventually I came across Christian like new age to Jesus testimonies. Like I started watching testimonies. And it's really when I started watching testimonies that like everything really changed for me. And like I don't know, it was just crazy, because and I encourage you, like if this is your first testimony that you're watching or something, like go ahead and watch like all the testimonies, because I watched like 100 of them, if not more. And every single one that I watched, I was like, what the heck? Like this is exactly like everything that I've been going through and struggling with my whole life. like they're putting it into like a little video and like explaining everything and saying that Jesus like helped them, you know? And I'm like, what? Like, I was like dumbfounded that that was even a possibility. And so I was just fascinated and I kept watching. And, you know, like I said, I'm a curious person. And also, thank God, I'm an open minded person. Like, even, you know, on things where I'm like, ugh, at first, and like I'm not into it, like, I change my mind on stuff, you know? Like, I keep it open and like, you know, I'll try it. I was always planning on researching Jesus eventually anyway, so I was like, I guess it's time. And, you know, it kind of makes sense. Like, and these people were saying that, like, Jesus helped them and everything. So I was like, maybe there is something to this. And I started keeping a prayer journal. I always have journaled, but I just figured, like, why am I just journaling? Like, I should be journaling to God. And, you know, watching all these videos, I really realized, like, how much I had been running away from God and that I was a sinner and, like, that I am a sinner and that I have so many things I have to come to God with and ask for his forgiveness and repent for, you know, and I just, like, had been running from that. And I also didn't know how to, like, pray it. So I just figured it would be easier to do a prayer journal because it's easier for me to write down my feelings sometimes anyway. So I just started keeping a prayer journal and I was watching all these testimonies, listening to the stuff at night, and like things started changing like inside me. I don't know how to explain it. Like I just started feeling different. And even though like I was still getting a ton of demonic attacks, like crazy stuff would be happening. Literally like super wild, ridiculous things would be happening. And like it was just a lot of things. And you know, at that point I knew, I was like, man, like I'm under demonic oppression. Like that's what's going on with me. Like it made so much sense all of a sudden. Like it was like a light bulb came on. Like people were talking about this and like I started learning about spiritual warfare and about demonic oppression and about deliverance and just everything that I never knew about, and I was blown away. And you know, I was like, there's totally something to this. Like it was like clicking in my mind, you know? And I just remember one night, like I used to just have these like weird panic attacks where I would just start shaking, and I couldn't stop shaking. Like, and I would feel so afraid and so anxious, and like my whole body would just like seize up and I couldn't control it. And one night I was here on the couch, like where I am right now, and I was having one of these episodes where I'm just shaking and I couldn't calm myself down. I couldn't relax. And, you know, I was just so afraid. And, you know, there's no one else around. And I just felt so helpless and so, like, weak. And it was just, it's like the worst feeling. And I was like, you know what? Like, I'm so tired of this. Like, I just closed my eyes and I started praying to Jesus. Because, like, you know, I watched all these testimonies, how people talked about how they did it and stuff. And I was like, I can do this too. Like, I have nothing to lose, you know? So I was like, okay, like, I'm right here, Jesus. And, like, I'm so tired of being scared all the time, of being afraid of people, afraid of their judgments, like afraid of criticism, afraid of like the mistakes that I've made, afraid of living my life, and just afraid of anything and everything, like all the time, like afraid of the unknown, you know? And I'm just so tired of this. Like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. I need help. Like, I need your help. And, you know, I don't know if you're real. I don't know if you're there. But people say that you are. And, like, if you are, can you just show me? Like, can you just tell me? Can you just give me something so I know that you're real, because if you are real, like, I will give you everything that I have. I just need to know that you're there. And I had my eyes closed, but all of a sudden, like, I could see the room in front of me. And there was Jesus standing there right in front of me. And he just, like, filled everything with so much peace. And he looked at me like he could see every experience that I've ever had, and that he understood everything that I was going through. That he knew all about my past and all about my future, and like his gaze was just looking like through everything that I was, you know? And not only understanding me, but accepting me and loving me, you know, exactly as I was. And in that moment, like, he reached out his hand to me, and I reached my hand out to him. And the second that I took his hand, I stopped shaking. Because that whole time I was just shaking. Because I couldn't stop. And I stopped shaking immediately. And I felt so much peace in my heart. And so much just calm and love. And it was crazy. Because the second I touched his hand also, there was an earthquake that happened. And it even registered on, I have like an earthquake app on my phone, and it even registered on my phone. It was like a 4.3 or something. And it was just insane. It was like the shaking was taken from me, and like the earth started shaking, you know, in my stead or something. Like, it was so wild. And I just remember, like, I opened my eyes and I was like, what just happened? Like, I was like so shook and like excited and like in disbelief and just amazed. And I was like, was that real? Like, did that just really happen? Like, what? And like, that was it for me, honestly. Like, that's literally it. Like, after that, dude, I've just been all about Jesus. Like, I can't learn enough about Jesus. I can't get enough of his presence. I can't get enough of the Holy Spirit in my life. Like, it's just so amazing. Like, every single thing has been falling into place since that moment. And that was last year in January. So that was like a year and some change ago, you know? And slowly but surely, like, I've been able to quit weed. Like, I quit weed last year as well. And I had to pray about that a lot. I tried and would do it for a couple months and fall off the wagon. It was so hard. And I don't drink anymore. Like, occasionally I'll have like a beer at a restaurant or like a margarita at a restaurant, but I've just totally lost interest in that. Like, I'm living every single day for the Lord. And like, I can't tell people about him enough, to be honest with you. I really can't. Like, it's crazy because, you know, here I was, this like person who just didn't want anything to do with Jesus at all. Like, I thought it was too easy, and I thought that, you know, I was like, why would God be interested in someone like me? Like, I'm so like flawed, and like, I'm a messed up person, you know? And like, dude, I have news for you. Like, God loves messed up people. Like, literally, messed up people are God's favorite thing. Like, cause he knows that we have like wisdom, and he knows that like we need him, and he really treasures us. Like, there's something just God is waiting to forgive you. Like it's not like he's sitting there. He's not like an angry, mean parent or something that's just sitting there like, no, like, I don't want to talk to you. Like, get away from me. You're a sinner. No, he's like, of course you're a sinner. Like, you live on this earth. Like, you're in the flesh, you know, like anyone who is a fleshly, like, human is a sinner. Like, that's the nature of the beast. Like, have you ever told a lie? Then you're a sinner. Like, that's all it takes, you know? And, like, he doesn't hold that against us. He just wants you to repent and try to do better, you know, and ask for forgiveness and accept the free gift of salvation that he gave when he came and died on the cross for your sins. You know, he didn't have to do that at all, but he did it because he loves us so much. And I used to never understand that either. And maybe I'll do a video. I will do a video on it because it's getting so late here. And I described all of this stuff in my other video, man. I went deep, and I feel like I'm losing my voice, and it just sucks. But God is so real, and like literally there's so many things that have happened, and now my faith just grows like every single day, because if something happens, I just go into prayer. Like, you know, I'll fast, I'll pray, like, and like God takes care of his children. He's going to take care of you. Like, I have no doubt at all in my mind, if you ask Jesus to come and show you, like, just show yourself to me, you know, so I can know that you're real and know that you love me. And he will. He literally will. He needs your permission, though, to, like, because he respects you. You know, it's your choice. It's your choice. And he's not just going to break into your life and be like, here I am, like, you better serve me. No, he doesn't do that. That's not how it works. Like, we have freedom because God loves us enough to give us the freedom to choose. And it's the same thing. I want to go deeper onto this, but it's the same thing with hell. God does not send people to hell. He lets people choose. Do you want to serve me, or do you want to serve Satan? Because if you're not serving God, you're serving Satan. And if you die and you're serving Satan, meaning you're not serving Jesus, then Satan gets you. He gets your soul. And he's, of course, going to drag you down to hell with him, because, like, he hates you. He hates God's children. He hates everything they represent. And as soon as he gets his claws into you, he's taking you to hell. God does not send people to hell. Like, that's where Satan will grab you and drag you to. But that's not God's will for any of his children. And like I said, I do want to get more into that later. But it is like super late here. I just want to get my testimony out, and I want to elaborate on it too. I have like so much stuff that I need to talk about for real, but I'm getting tired, and I feel like I'm losing my voice for real. But I thank you for watching. I know this was like a pretty long video. I knew it was going to be long. I told you that I ramble on sometimes, but it's not without purpose, you know. And I just want to say that if you have not accepted Jesus into your heart, you know, do some research, look into it if you must, but just remember, our time is short, and you have nothing to lose with Jesus at all. You know, all you have to do is admit you're a sinner, which we all are. You know, swallow your pride and realize we all are sinners. Ask God for forgiveness, repent, and accept Jesus. You know, if you proclaim with your mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord, that he died on the cross for you, and that he returned and rose from the grave 3 days later, then you're saved. That's all it takes. Like, that's literally all. And then live your life for God after that. Like, if you really love God and you're watching these videos because you're searching and you're trying to find something, like, that's what it is. And you don't have to believe what I'm saying. Like, go and look and you'll see what I'm talking about. But you won't find that anywhere else. You won't find salvation. You won't find God hiding deep in some esoteric knowledge. You won't find him there, because I looked, believe me. And, you know, I mean, at the end of the day, it's your decision, but when you actually give Jesus a chance, like, he will show up for you. And I know that that's true 100%. And each and every single day, I mean, voices, like, I don't hear voices anymore, you know? I don't feel like a crazy person anymore. Like, I'm literally being delivered from all of those things. And God wants to deliver you too. You know, all that mess that I went through, you know, I didn't even tell you guys a fraction of the things that I've gone through in this video. Literally, I haven't. It would take like a million years to tell you all the crap that I've gone through. But, you know, I shared with you some relevant things that came to my heart as I'm recording this. You know, I don't have a script. I don't have a plan of what I'm going to say. I'm just talking from the heart here. And, you know, all of those things that I went through, I can tell you were 100% worth it, because now I am exactly where I need to be, and every step that I took led me here. And it wasn't for no reason. And maybe all that stuff that I went through was just so I could tell you about it. You know, I think about that all the time. Sometimes we go through things and we don't understand the reason why. And it's so later on, I'm getting chills right now. It's so later on we can tell someone who's going through that same thing right at that moment, like, hey, I went through what you're going through. I know exactly how you feel. And like, God saved me from all of that. He had his hand, he never took his hand off of me, even though, like, I didn't want to believe that for a really long time. I was like, where is he? You know, I didn't know. But he was right there. He's just waiting for me to call on the name of Jesus. Not on the name of Jehovah, you know, or some other false god. He was waiting on me to call on the name of Jesus. And that's what it is. That's all it is. It's amazing, honestly. It's mind-blowing. And it's simple and beautiful and real. Anyways, I thank you for watching this video. Please, you know, share it. Feel free, please, share it. Subscribe if you want to talk more. Comment below. Let me know how this video affected you. It hasn't been easy for me to make at all. Like, it took me like a year to make this video. So just know that, you know, I've been fighting to get this out for you specifically. Like, if you're watching this video, don't think that it's just a coincidence either, because it's not. This video is for you. And that's the honest to God truth. Anyways, I'm gonna go to bed because I'm super tired. Thank you for watching the video, though. I pray that God will bless you by watching this, and that you'll have truth. I love you guys. Have a good night.